Good morning. God morning to love appearing as you and to love appearing as Rupert Spira. Thank you so much for being here with me again.
Lovely to see you again, Nikki. Thank you for inviting me.
I have so many questions and no questions at the same time. It's been a while since we met.
When did we last talk?
It must have been at least 2 years ago,
2 years
maybe
ago.
3 years
Yes,
ago. It's been a
yes,
while. It's been a
yes.
while. And I don't even remember what all we talked about. I kind of have a feeling it had to do with God and love.
I.
And I'm wondering.
That's a fairly safe bet. Yes.
Yes. So only God is here, this presence. Why do we appear to be here? Like, what is the purpose of all of this?
The purpose of all of this, from our individual points of view, and really, it's only relevant to speak of purpose from an individual point of view. The purpose from our individual points of view is to realize that ultimately, just as you said, Nikki, only God is here,
Yeah.
or only God is. In other words, the individual is an apparent or an illusory appearance of the only one that truly is, namely infinite, self-aware being, God's being. And that being shines in each of us as the knowledge I am. So for the individual, the knowledge I am is like the trace that the infinite leaves of itself in
Mm.
each of our finite minds. And that is why it is said that God's name is I am. So all we as apparent individuals need do is to sound the divine name I am once and allow oneself to be drawn into that
Mm.
to which the name I am refers.
Now, I remember picking up a Nisargadatta Maharaj book, his final talks. And up until that point, I'd been practicing staying aware of the I am without the words I am, just the presence, being aware of the silent being, this knowingness. And then in that book, and I can't quote him, it's somewhere on this bookshelf, he said that's the door that takes you out, but that not even the I am is true. And I closed the book immediately and I'm like, well, I'm not ready for that because the I am is all I've got to hold, it's all I got to hold on to. So I'm wondering how you feel about that, what that is, what he's pointing at. Like, because I understand that if you're aware of something, that means it's not you. And we're
Yes.
aware of this beingness, but also you could say it's self aware. And I go in these loops, I've been doing this for
Yes.
years. I
Okay.
probably did this with you on the last talk.
Yes. Yes. So the knowledge I am seems to be a finite knowledge that each of our minds possess. And in that sense, the I am is limited. So although the knowledge I am is could be said to be a doorway, the actual knowledge itself, that doorway is a threshold through which the apparent individual passes. And as it does so, it loses its limitations and stands revealed as the infinite.
Ah.
So it's true, the knowledge I am appears to be, it is a doorway in the mind, but it's a doorway that leads out of the mind. Let me give
Mm.
you an analogy, Nikki, to try and make this clearer. Imagine a Turner watercolor painting, and it's a landscape painted at midnight.
Mm.
So it's dark, but you can just make out trees and fields and rocks and the river. Up in the top left-hand corner of the painting is the full moon. And when we first look at the painting, the full moon seems to be an object in the painting. When we go up close to it, we realize it's actually the only part of the paper that has not been painted.
Mm.
In other words, the full moon seems to be an object in the landscape,
Exactly.
but in fact, it's a portal in the landscape through which we directly access the white paper.
Mm.
But the knowledge I am is the full moon. The experience I am is the white paper.
Boom. That's excellent. It makes complete sense. And it shows the danger of just leaning on words, because what you explained is the experience that is here, of only love is here, only God is here. It's not a concept, and it's not limited to here where Nikki appears. It's there where you appear
Yes,
and where all the
yes,
stuff appears.
yes. And as soon as the mind tries to formulate that, it's not really an experience, but
I know what you mean.
that transparent experience, the pure awareness of being, the first formulation the mind can make of that non-objective experience is I am.
Mm.
So in some ways, the I am is if you're passing from God's infinite being to the finite, the knowledge I am is the doorway through which the infinite passes on its way to seeming to become finite. But it's the same doorway
Right.
through which the finite passes in the other direction as it loses its limitations and stands revealed as the infinite.
Mm.
So the I am is like the doorway that stands between a prison and the outside world. You pass the doorway in one direction from the outside
Mhm.
world, you go into prison, to bondage,
Yes.
to captivity. You lose your freedom.
Mhm.
But you pass through the same doorway in the opposite direction, you lose your limitations and you stand free again. So the I am is the doorway.
Mm. That's gorgeous and makes complete sense. Why does it seem that we go back and forth, even though we are aware that freedom is a thing, that it is here? What is it that pulls us back in and we seem to close the door behind ourselves?
Because of the tremendous habit that lives in each of our minds to believe and feel that we are an individual entity, that whatever it is that is perceiving or knowing our experience is located in and generated by and shares the limitations of the body.
Mm.
And it is this habit that constantly pulls us back, as you rightly say, to being an apparent individual with all the sorrow and the conflict that attends that feeling. Very, very occasionally in the literature, we hear of people who trace their way back to their essential being. And so powerful is the recognition that the old habit of believing and feeling ourselves to be a temporary, finite separate self never returns again. But in almost all cases, for most of us, this back and forth is necessary. We need to
Mm.
go back again and again and again to visit, to taste, to recognize our essential being before the old habit of thinking and feeling takes over again. But then
Yeah.
every time we trace our way back and return to the fact of simply being, we are weakening that old habit. We are
Mm.
weakening the pull that the old habit of thinking and feeling exerts over us. And we become gradually, in most cases, established in our true nature.
So let's just say that there's a moment where things get crazy in your experience,
Yes,
where you'd have that tendency to be pulled back into yourself.
yes,
How do you pull yourself out? Like, what does it feel like to turn and to walk back across that threshold?
yes. Well, to begin with, for most of us, returning to one's being needs to be initiated by some kind of practice or thought process.
Mhm.
For instance, one might ask oneself a question such as, let's say, as you suggest, you're lost in feelings or
Mhm.
activities or a particular situation and so on. One might ask oneself, what is it that knows or is aware of my experience? And this question will take one's attention away from whatever it is we are aware of, our thoughts, feelings, sensations, perception, and so on, and will invite our attention to trace its way back to its source. Most of the time, our attention is involved with the content of experience. But this question, or any similar question, what is it? What is it that is aware of my experience? Invites the attention to travel back in the opposite direction, inwards, selfwards.
Mm.
So that would be one way, and another way, possibly even more direct, and we hinted at this at the beginning of the conversation, would just be to sound the name I am once in one's mind, because everyone can say of their experience, I am.
Mm.
Not just those relatively few of us that are interested in these matters, but all 8 billion of us can say uh, of their experience, I am.
Yeah.
It's just that not everybody knows exactly what those words refer to, because in most cases, the I am has become entangled with the content of experience. Hence, I am lonely, I am sad, and so on. So all one need do is just sound the name, say the words, I am, just once, inwardly to oneself. And having said the words, allow oneself to be drawn into that to which the words refer, because the words I am refer to something, they refer to an experience. So as long as we don't allow the I am to be mixed with anything, thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions, as long as we just stay with the pure I am and we allow ourselves to be drawn into that, that also takes us away from the content of experience, away from any limitation that we may believe and feel ourselves to have, back to our true nature. Now,
Excellent.
I said at the beginning of my response to your question that to begin with, some kind of practice or reasoning process or thought
Mhm.
process might be necessary, such as the two examples I gave you. After a while, one no longer need to actually ask oneself the question, what is it that knows or is aware of my experience? Or take the thought, I am. You find yourself lost in experience. The moment you notice it, you just go straight back.
Exactly.
It's instantaneous. You no longer need the prompt of thinking.
Yeah. I just actually did an episode about that, not needing the prompt today. That'll go up, I think, tomorrow. Well, it'll be Tuesday then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wonder about prayer. It's like, so I feel like I'm always tap dancing at that threshold, right? I go into it for a while and then I'm out of it. And then there's moments where my prayer, my style form of prayer is silence, just being this formless one, this invisible presence. And then there's moments where I feel like I want to bow to it, like there's two, and it feels juicier. It feels like it's easier to tap into that love. And I wonder what prayer means to you, and if you find
Yeah.
yourself going between duality and non-duality, and why
Yes.
we do that, and if there's
Yes.
purpose.
Nikki, both the forms of prayer that you mentioned are genuine and legitimate. The first prayer you mentioned, in some ways, is the higher form of prayer. The very highest form of prayer is simply awareness of being. That's the ultimate prayer, the ultimate surrender to God, or the practice of the presence of God. Because in the awareness of being, that there is no personal self that is aware of being. It is being that is aware of itself. So the pure awareness of being it's the highest prayer. It's the ultimate surrender, the ultimate devotion, in which there is no person left to pray, to be surrendered, to be devoted. There is just God's infinite being, aware of itself. However, if we feel that we are a temporary, finite, separate self, then the second type of prayer that you mention is the highest prayer, namely bowing in adoration and surrender.
I feel like you have read or know of Brother Lawrence.
I love Brother Lawrence's work. Yes.
I do too. I do too. And I've been revisiting it lately. And for the last like 2 minutes that you've been talking, I'm like, I feel like we're vibing on this Brother Lawrence level. I think it was 2016 when I first came across his work. But I find myself just depending on the day and depending on the circumstances, either just being the presence, like praying with that just silent love or praying to it. And either
Yes.
way, it's a beautiful, like I'm thankful, to have this.
Yes. Brother Lawrence, in a way, is a beautiful representative of the second type of prayer that
Mhm.
we mentioned. But really, between these two types of prayer, we shouldn't make a distinction. For all practical purposes, it's the same. But the
Yeah.
second type of prayer, where we still feel ourselves an individual praying to God, surrendering to God, that is the highest state of the individual, because the
Ah,
individual places itself in the right relationship to God.
servant, like that service side.
Devotee,
Yeah.
servant. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I don't. I in practice, although one might argue that in the second type of prayer, the individual still remains as the devotee,
Mhm. Mhm.
whereas in the first type of prayer, the pure awareness of being, that there is no individual left,
Right.
either to be devoted or not. But these are um, it's a true distinction, but a somewhat intellectual one. If one was fully engaged in either of these two types of prayer, it would be sufficient.
I was at a Catholic retreat center a while back, and there's a scripture that I can't remember, but it stood out to me. And it was saying that Jesus, even though he knew he was one with the Father, humbled himself, to be a servant, to die on the cross. And I thought it just felt like a true sign of
Beautiful,
be
yes,
this servant, be of
exactly,
service to everyone and to
and
God.
and of course, yes, exactly. And of course, we do lead our lives as apparent individuals in an apparently external world. And even if we know, as of course we, and I'm sure many of your listeners and viewers know, that's not how things really are. Nevertheless,
Exactly.
in this life, it's the way things seem to be, and it's appropriate for us to behave in such a way. So, as this apparent individual, to be, as you say, a servant, a devotee of God, is the appropriate attitude
I
to
love
take.
that. Do
Yes,
you pray
yes.
like that ever? Like, do you still do the servant
Do you
devotee
know? I
prayer?
do. Yes, yes. I I do. I sometimes when I was a child, I used to say my prayers in a kind of simplistic, childish way.
Mhm.
Every night when I was 5 and 6 years old, dear God, thank you, God, for
Yeah.
mummy and daddy, and I'd go through a whole list of everything that I was thankful to God for, and sometimes I find myself just spontaneously speaking in a similar kind of way that I did when I was a 5-year-old boy,
Yeah.
and it's dualistic language, but I don't care.
Mhm.
That's not important, because it's the feeling that informs uh, our activities. In this case, our prayer, that is important, whether or not it's couched in dualistic or non-dualistic language. It is really irrelevant.
That
So
is
yes,
freeing to
I
hear.
do find myself still praying in this way, yes, as well as also um, simply abiding in
Yes.
being as being. Yes,
Yes, yes. Sometimes I'll turn to God within and I'll be like, "Hey, I need," and before I can voice the need, I catch myself and I'm like, "You, I just need to be aware of you."
yes,
And
yes.
it's like that's like both the prayers in one, and then I go back
That's
into,
like both
the
the prayers in one.
silence.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is this life. Thank you so much for sharing that and for easing this mind. This mind here is so active and it goes down the same rabbit holes, and like, should it be this way? Should it be that way? But I know what feels right. This love feels right. And they both
Nikki,
take you to the
Nikki,
same place.
Nikki, if your mind is active in the service of God, then that's as good as your mind not being active.
Oh,
Either
thank
way,
you.
it's fine.
I'm gonna dance. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you have the time and feel comfortable, I'd love for you to lead like a 2 to 3 minute long meditation for us to just guide us into the experience of the I am.
You'd like me to do that now?
Yeah,
Yes, certainly. Certainly.
awesome. I'm gonna mute so you can take it away.
So, first of all, just be with your eyes closed. Be aware, first of all, of any sounds that are present in your environment, the sound of my voice or any other sounds that may be present. Now be aware of any thoughts that are present. Don't try to control your thoughts in any way. Just be aware of the flow of thoughts as they pass by. Now be aware of your bodily sensations, the tingling of your face or hands or feet, or the sensation of your legs on the chair or floor, or the temperature of the air on your skin. Now be aware of any feelings or emotions that may be present. Now be aware of your breath. Breath is perhaps one of the most transparent experiences there is. Just be aware of your breath. And now be aware of the fact of simply being. I suggested that our breath was one of the most transparent or silent experiences there is, but our being is even more silent, even more transparent, even more empty than the breath. And just as we don't normally notice our breath because our attention is so involved with the world, the body and the mind. And for this reason, we don't notice our breath because it is so quiet. For the same reason, we don't notice the fact of simply being. We overlook our being. We forget ourselves. because our attention is focused on the more colorful, demanding aspects of experience. So the essence of prayer or meditation is simply to trace one's way back through the layers of experience, discarding, so to speak, anything that is not essential to us, until we come back to the fact of simply being. As we trace our way back through the layers of experience, we discard everything that is not essential to us. It's a little like getting undressed at night. We take off all the layers of clothing until our naked body is revealed. It's exactly the same in prayer or meditation. We discard, or at least turn away from, all the layers of experience, thoughts, images, feelings, sensations, and so on, with which we have been involved all day long, until we come back to our naked being. Our naked being is always present, just behind or underneath all the layers of experience, just as our naked bodies are always present underneath our clothing. But we don't notice our naked being because our attention is so absorbed in the content of experience. So in everyday life, we neglect our being in favor of the content of experience. In prayer or meditation, we magnify our being. We are aware of being. And we relax the focus of our attention from the content of experience. We just come back to ourself, come back to being. And when our being has been divested of all the qualities that it borrows from the content of experience, it loses its limitations and stands revealed as infinite being, God's being, the only being there is. This awareness of being is really the shining of God's presence in us, as us. Not really the shining of God's presence in us, because there is no us apart from God's presence, in whom God's presence might shine. There is only God's presence shining in us as our experience of ourself, usually mixed with the content of experience and as such seemingly limited. But in this simple awareness of being, shining as it essentially is, and as such, the awareness of being is the ultimate prayer, the ultimate surrender, because we cease to be the individual self that we previously believed and felt ourself to be, and we stand revealed as the one infinite being, God's being, the only being there is. And it is that being, this being, that shines in each of us as the knowledge I am. As such, the knowledge I am is like a trace, like a hint that God leaves of itself in each of our hearts. All day long, we think and feel and say things like, I am tired, I am lonely, I am excited, I'm on my way to work, I am busy, and so on. In each of these statements, the I am is present there, albeit mixed with a thought, a feeling, an action, a relationship, and so on. All that is necessary is to see the pure I am for what it is before it is mixed with the content of experience. All that is necessary is to sound the divine name I am once, silently within oneself, and allow oneself to be drawn into its referent, and simply to abide as that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are so intentional with your words. That's what first attracted me to your teaching. And it taught me too. I try to be just as intentional with my words, no extra words, like every word being full of
Yes,
presence.
yes, yes.
Before I let you go, I want to know in those words that you have what it's like there most of the time, most of the seeming moments for you, like how you would explain experiencing the formlessness or being the formlessness and being Rupert simultaneously.
Well, what I notice, Nikki, is that the fact of being, God's being, the only being there is, shines more and more brightly in my experience. The veiling layers of thought, feeling, perception, and so on, they get thinner and thinner. It's as if the watercolor paint gets thinner and thinner. And as a result, the white paper shines through not just the full moon, but the entire landscape.
That's good.
So that God's being, infinite being, the only being there is, shines more and more brightly in my internal experience. Fewer and fewer thoughts and feelings have the capacity to veil that being. But I also notice that outwardly, in the so-called outside world, that the ability of my perceptions, sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells, to obscure the being that lies behind them and of which they are an appearance, diminishes. And as a result, infinite being, God's being, shines more brightly in the world as well as in myself.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. And I want the one listening right now to know how they can connect more with your teachings. What you got going on? What's new?
Well, Nikki, the best and easiest way is to go to my YouTube channel. I was looking at something, just some figures about it yesterday. To my surprise, I've been saying for a few years to people that I have 500 clips on YouTube. Apparently, I have 1,000. I was not aware of this until yesterday. So
Wow.
I have an embarrassing number of clips on YouTube. That's the easiest thing. Just put Rupert Spira into YouTube. And then if you want to find out more, go to rupertspira.com and you can find out about books and events and webinars and so on. One thing I should also tell you, Nikki, and of course, when the time comes, we'll let you know personally about this. For some time, I've been developing a meditation app. It's going to be
That's
called
wonderful.
Luminous, and that'll come out in January. And these are just short 10-minute daily meditations, very, very similar to the 5-minute meditation we did earlier.
Yeah.
And these are just delivered to you free every morning for 10 minutes. So in time, it's not quite out yet. It'll be out in January, but I'll let you know when the time comes. That would be another
That's
way.
wonderful. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being at the same time that I appear to be. I am thankful deeply. The books that I stumbled upon all those years ago, your YouTube videos, you taking the time to talk with me these 2 times, the emails, I appreciate you deeply.
Nikki, I always enjoy and am deeply touched by our conversations. We share a deep love of God, or love of truth, and it is that informs and inspires these conversations. So it's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Yes, thank you. I love you. I love you. I love you.
I love you too, Nikki. Lovely to speak with you again. I have great admiration for the work that you do. It's beautiful, the work that you're doing. And
Thank you. Thank you.